This is the video that's going to go with guided notes, graphing standard forms of linear equations. Now, let's go ahead and clarify some vocabulary right here. Standard form just means that the x and the y are on the same side of the equation together, and sometimes you will see it just denoted like that. X and y on the same side of the equal, and your constant on the other side of the equal. Now, A, B, and C are not really variables. They're the numbers from one equation to the other, okay? X and Y do stay the same. X is input, Y is output, okay? Now, this is different from the slope-intercept form that we looked at before, where you had Y on one side and your X and constant on the other, okay? Now, we're going to graph these. What we have to do before we can graph them, though, is to make sure that we get it into slope-intercept form, okay? And this is a two-step process, okay? So if you just want to make a little note about the steps. The first step is to subtract the x term, okay? The second step is to divide by y's coefficient. I just totally misspelled coefficient and blocked that up, but you know what I'm talking about, okay? Now, take a look right here. Let's look at the first one. I said we're going to subtract the x, and you actually did some of these problems when we did our literal equations unit way back in September. Okay, when we did those lessons, you just didn't know what you were doing, that we were going to bring it back later. So I'm going to subtract the x from both sides, okay? Now, that means my x's are going to cancel out, and that's going to be y equals. Now, I want you to remember something. Again, I'm just going to scribble right up here at the top. We want our work to end up looking like slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Which means the x term needs to come first and the b term needs to go last, okay? So with that said, when I rewrite these two terms, because we know we can't really add them together because they're not like terms, I'm going to make sure the x term goes first and the constant goes last. So what it's going to look like is negative x minus 3, okay? Now, if I'd had a number here in front of y other than 1, I would divide in the next step. But luckily, this is that one-step situation, okay? So we're in slope-intercept form because we have y equals x and my b, mx plus b right here. So we're good to go. Now, this process is actually what they might say are just called solving for y. That's what that's called. If they say solve it for y or we're solving for y, that's what they mean to do. We're going to take this standard equation and we're going to turn it into slope-intercept form. Okay? Now, the graphing here is the same thing as before. I know my m up here is, right here is negative 1 over 1. I know my b is negative 3. So I can graph that. Remember, we start with b, and we're going to start at negative 3 right here. And then from there, we're going to go down 1, right 1, because my slope is negative 1 over 1. So down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, just like that. And we're going to lay our ruler down. Again, I'm not going to make a little bitty baby line that nobody can see. I'm going to make it nice and big with the arrows on each end. Okay? And I'm done. So the only new thing for us today was taking this standard form, using what we learned with literal equations, and solve it for y. So then we could pick out this information and do it just like, graph it just like we did in our last lesson. Okay? Now, look at number 2. Now, some people are going to want to put in 1 placeholders, and that is fine, okay? So I can put in 1x minus 1y equal to 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract the 1x from both sides, just like that. Well, the 1x minus 1x cancels, and that leaves me with negative 1y equal to, now remember here, we're going to write the x term first. So I'm going to write down negative 1x plus 2. Now we have a second step because we have a number in front of y that's not a 1. So that means I got to divide everything by negative 1. Now notice how I wrote that. I literally divided everything by negative 1. Okay? Now, negative 1 divided by negative 1 cancels out and just leaves us with y. Same thing even right here. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 cancels out and leaves me with x. But now right here, positive 2 divided by negative 1 is negative 2, so I write down minus 2. Okay? Now, my slope is the number in front of the x, which is 1. Make it a ratio, 1 over 1. My b is my constant, and since it's minus 2, it's going to be negative 2. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start my graph at negative 2. My slope is 1 over 1, so that means up 1, right 1. So up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, just like that. And I'm going to lay it down. Just like that, and I'm done. Okay, go ahead and get this copied down and we'll do number 3. Now, number 3, if you look at your numbers, and even you can see number 4 down here under number 3, x and y's have coefficients that are not 1s. Okay, so that's the focus here on this. So, number 3, I'm still going to do the same 2 steps, even though there's no 1s there. I'm going to subtract the 4x from both sides. So I've got 2y equal to, rewrite it so that the x is first, negative 4x. The 8 is positive, so I put plus 8. Now, we're going to divide by the 2. Now remember, you're dividing everything by 2. Not just the first or second thing, everything, okay? Well, 2 over 2 gives me y. Negative 4 divided by 2 gives me negative 2x. And positive 8 divided by 2 is positive or plus 4. Now, again, identifying my key points here. M is negative 2 over 1. B is going to be positive 4. So when I start this graph, I'm going to positive 4 on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. My slope is negative 2 over 1, so that means I'm going down 2 and to the right 1 and put a dot. I'm going to do that pattern one more time, down 2 and to the right 1. So I have 3 dots, 3 points. Shouldn't say dots, I should say points. Just like that. And I'm going to put arrows, and I'm done. Okay. Notice again, even though I didn't have 1s as my coefficients, the process was still the same. Okay. Now look at number 4. Okay. Let's go ahead and start this one, solving it for y. I'm going to subtract this 4x from both sides. So that gives me negative 3y equal to negative 4x plus 9. Okay? Now, I'm losing my light. My sunlight went in. Now, I'm going to divide by negative 3. Just like that. Now, negative 3 divided by negative 3 cancels out and leaves me with y. Now right here, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, but 4 divided by 3 does not simplify. So I'm going to have positive 4 over 3x. right here, 9 divided by -3 is -3. So I'm going to write -3. Now, hold on. Give me 2 seconds to get some more light going. Here we go. Now, let's graph this. We're going to graph at -3. So 1, 2, 3 right here. Okay. Our slope is up 4 and to the right 3. Up 4, right 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. There's a little line right there. You kind of cut it off to squeeze it on there. We can estimate that little half of a block. Put our ruler down and put our arrows, and we are complete. Now, finish copying these notes. Make sure they're in your interactive notebook and go to Canvas and find your assignment.